I want to talk about the question. Kids often ask questions like, who made God? These kind of questions that children will ask. How did Noah fit all those animals in the ark? How can a snake talk? And how did the walls of Jericho come down while people were shouting? So these kind of questions kids will have when they're in Sunday school. But when we get older, we have different questions. We ask things like, does Jesus see the circumstances I'm in? Does he know what I'm going through? And does he care? And the devil uses these questions to throw back into our face, God doesn't care about you. There are too many people for God to care about, and certainly he's not thinking about you. After all, look at your record. And that goes on. Things like that keep going on. We're not interested in where Cain got his wife. We're not going to let another man's wife disturb our thinking. But we are interested in, does Jesus care about what it is that I'm going through, and can he help me? I'd like you to look at a few passages from John, the 5th chapter, and I want you to know as we're reading through this that these words have been read and thought about for 2,000 years. 2,000 years people have read this. Some quickly read through it. Some read it and thought their way through it. I'd like to think our way through it. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. The only hospitals they had in those days were this. There were no hospitals. The influence of Jesus brought hospitals into our world. So before that, people would find a place where they could put a mat, lay down on the mat, and there they would either wait to be healed or wait to die. And in Jerusalem, there was these 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed. So all kinds of people were in these porches, lying on mats. For an angel went down at a certain time, a certain season of the year, into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever stepped in first was made well of whatever disease he had. It's interesting when I'm reading through this, just what the people thought in that day. When the water was stirred, the first one in would get healed. But what I was thinking of was, there is a time and a season that God does move. And when that season comes, we need to act. Now there was a lame man, a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. He was lame. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, do you want to be made well? That's an odd question to ask a man who has been a long time on a mat, waiting to die. Of course, he wants to be made well. And it seems so obvious that this question sounds kind of silly, but Jesus never asks a silly question. There's something in this question that we need to talk about. It says that he had an infirmity, and infirmity in Scripture simply means weakness. His weakness was his ankles. For 38 years, he could not stand up. For 38 years, he could not walk. Can you imagine lying on a mat for 3 or 4 weeks? Year after year, this man was on a mat, waiting for the waters to be stirred, never could get the water on time. Jesus comes along and says, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be made whole? That's an odd question. He had a weakness. The interesting thing about it is so many times people read through the stories in the Bible and they will, in the back of their mind, say, what does that have to do with me? I'm not lame. But everybody has a weakness somewhere. Everybody. We are not Superman or Superwoman. That's fiction. That's comic book stuff. The truth of the matter is we know we have weaknesses. Some of us know what those weaknesses are. Some don't. But we all have them. A weakness. Somewhere in our life, somewhere in our body, somewhere in our mind, somewhere in our spirit, there's a weakness. We would like to hide our weakness. We don't really want to show people our weaknesses. We'd rather hide it. But if we're not going to hide our weakness, we like to relabel it. If we give it another label, then maybe our weakness may sound like a strength. I'm really not worrying. I'm concerned. That takes a weakness, turns it into a strength. I'm not afraid. I'm a cautious person. It's just a matter of changing the labels, and we can change a weakness into a strength. I'm not arrogant and proud. I'm confident. You see how you can just change a word and change the whole complexion of how you might feel about yourself? I'm not a fault finder. I have discernment. It's amazing how many people hide behind the gift of discernment when they're just simply using it to find fault. I'm not a negative person. I have the gift of criticism. Now, you could read through the Bible and you will discover there are a lot of gifts in the Bible, but you will not find one, the gift of criticism. So we could change. It's possible that we know we have a weakness, but we don't want to advertise the weakness, so we change the name, put a new label on it, and now it becomes a strength. I'm not angry. It's my technique. It's a technique that I use to keep people who bother me from bothering me. It's just the way I get control of a situation that other people. It's just my way of stopping people from doing what people want to do, and so I just become angry and it works. Thank you very much. It's amazing. Sometimes we think of anger as explosive, just some explosive, but all anger is not explosive. All anger is not shouting, breaking, and smashing things. I was driving to Sunlight this Friday, and I had the dogs in the back of the car. And I got the windows open, and usually it's a lady that's looking out the window. And there's a coyote that walks across the road. And it gets to the side where lady has her head out the window. Lady is perfectly calm, enjoying the weather, until she sees the coyote. And then I watched in my rearview mirror, lady literally wanted to jump out of the window. Her paws were shaking, she was barking. She went from totally placid to furious. Some people practice anger that way. Lady does. I'm going to get her a couple of calming pills. For that. But that's how quick. So I had a fellow come into my office years ago, come into my office, and he told me, so I want you to preach some messages on tolerance. I thought, that's odd. Somebody comes into my office and gives me the subject matter for what I should be preaching on. And then he was telling me there were people that were upset with him in church. He never told me why they were upset with him, but he wanted me to set aside some time to preach on the subject of toleration. We got to talking, and in the conversation, he mentioned that when he's on the freeway and somebody cuts him off, he goes after the driver. He'll weave through traffic to catch up with this guy that cut it. I said, do you have an anger problem? He said, no. There are people who don't even know what their weakness is. Or if they know, simply deny it. No, he did have. I'm not going to go into all the details of what we talked about, but he definitely had an anger problem. But we often think of anger as an explosive kind of a situation, but not all anger is explosive. Sometimes it's imploding. Instead of being verbal or outward, it's like they swallow a grenade and it goes off, and now they are fuming, they are upset, their blood is boiling, you can't see it, but smoke's coming out of their ears. They are having a moment where internally there's a lot of disruption going on, but you may not know that's going on. That's also anger. It's a weakness that people don't know how to deal with. And what they do is they allow it to internalize and do damage on the inside. It can turn out into passive-aggressive behavior. It can become seen as the silent treatment, the cold shoulder, sort of passive-aggressive behavior. You ask them to do something and they just drag their feet to get it done, to communicate to you they don't like what it... It can turn into depression. That kind of anger can slip right into a depressive state. Or it can become sarcasm. Sarcasm is simply a way of hiding. Like this, I thought this was interesting. If your phone doesn't ring, it was me. It's a word, it's a statement, it's a phrase that's used like a sniper's bullet. You get the message when it's directed at you. It might even be said, and others may laugh about it, but it is specifically directed toward the person who is the target. That's anger. Anger comes out. Now, it could be humorous, but so often it's used as a way of covering up the anger. And what can happen is a person can end up with what we call a chip on their shoulder. A chip on their shoulder. This is the person who's you're wondering, where in the world am I going with this? You will see in a moment. And Jesus said, do you want to be made well? There are people who have weaknesses that do not want to be made well because they're so used to the weakness that they have, it works for them and they don't want to get well. And a person that has a chip on their shoulder is a very defensive person. You could tell they're defensive because their answers go quickly coming out, and they're trying to defend themselves. And I read about a cowboy. I don't think it's a true story, but I read about this cowboy. Goes into the saloon and starts drinking. He's drinking too much. They want to play a trick on him, so they smear Limburger cheese under his nose, on his mustache. He comes somehow to his senses. He's stumbling around this way and that way, and he's got this disgusted look on his face. And finally he stumbles out of the saloon and he says, it's no use. The whole world stinks. You know that song we sing? It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Sometimes we act in such a way that we think it's everybody else out there when actually it's me, oh Lord. I'm dealing with something. That is hurting me and hurting other people at the same time. Jesus goes to this man who has been lame for 38 years and he says, would you like to be made well? The sick man answered Jesus, said, sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. I'm lame. I don't have anybody. Because if I had somebody, if there was somebody there to help me to get into the pool, I would be able to get healed. Maybe would have been healed by now, but I don't. And so many people will use the, I don't have, if I just had this, then I could. It is possible that his statement was sarcastic. I want you to think about this for a moment. He's been lame for 38 years. Jesus comes and asks a very odd question. Would you like to be made well? I could just feel the triggering device go off in him. Of course, but I don't have a man. When I read this passage, I thought about something that I had thought about years ago. Before I came to California, I was in my 30s. I came to California when I was 34. That's a long time ago, a very long time ago. When I got to California, the thought on my mind was, I've been a pastor now for 6 years back east, and I don't have any retirement program. The churches that I pastored didn't have a program for retirement. And so that was on the back of my mind. What am I going to do? My mother taught me to save, so I was always saving, but that saving was not going to carry me through retirement. And so I'm thinking about retirement, and I'm thinking, if I only found somebody out there that could help me. That's my thought. I was thinking about somebody, maybe somebody could see and they could come and offer some advice, and maybe I could. While I'm going through all of this, and I wasn't thinking about it every day, but every once in a while it'll come into my mind. We bought a home in Yorba Linda. We were there for 3 years, and 3 years later it doubled in value. And I said, wow. We sold it, bought another home. 7 years later, it doubled in value. And it dawned on me, I don't have to do anything. I don't need anybody to help me come up with a retirement program. I could do it myself. This man was saying, if I only had somebody, that when the water was stirred up, they could help me step into the pool. So many times what we're doing is we're looking for somebody to help us when God says, the help is right there with you between your two elbows. You just don't see it yet, but if you open up your eyes, and at that point, Lord opened up my eyes, and I suddenly discovered I could be in real estate and never miss a beat when it comes to studying God's Word, which is what I wanted. And so God fixed this thing for me, with me. I didn't need another man. And I've been so thankful about that. And I wonder if sometimes we're thinking, if just somebody could step into my world and help me, I may be able to get over this thing that I'm going through. And we think about somebody and some person and something, and if I had more money, and if I had more education, if I had more of this, and if I had more of that, and all mine is going to, if I had more and more, and standing in front of this man is Jesus. The one person who could change his life forever. And sometimes what we're doing is we're wrestling with a weakness that we have, and we're thinking about all kinds of ways that it might be dealt with, when Jesus, standing right there, who has the answer we're looking for. Jesus said to him, "Rise." Now, I want you to be that man who's been lame for 38 years, and you hear Jesus say, "Rise," and he's going to think, "Rise? You're asking me the question, do you want to be well? And now you're telling me to rise? You think I can rise? If I could have risen, I would have done it 38 years ago, and you're telling me to rise?" And then he says, "Take up your bed." I've been on this bed for 38 years. It holds me up. Now you want me to rise and pick it up? Now it seems like the statement that Jesus made is absolutely incredible. Do you want to be made well? Yes. Rise. Can't do that. Pick up your bed. Can't do that. And walk. I can't do that. You're asking me to do something I can't do. And there's so many times when the Lord is working with us and we have difficulties that we're moving around in our mind and trying to get through. And the Lord is asking us to do something that sounds impossible. I can't get over this bitterness. I can't get over this bitterness because this bitterness keeps reminding me of my enemy. And if I get rid of this bitterness, the enemy disappears. I got to keep my bitterness. If I don't keep this resentment, then I can't be angry at my enemy. And so we go through some difficult times in our thinking that God is asking us to do something, and we just go, I can't just get rid of porn because it's kept me all this time. I just can't get rid of it. I can't get rid of my feelings. I can't get rid of this habit. If I could have gotten rid of this habit, I would have gotten rid of it a long time ago. I've got this habit because I'm addicted to this thing. I don't know how to get rid of this thing. So often we will live with a dysfunction and finally come to terms with it and say, that's just the way it is. That's my lot in life. There is no victory here. And Lord knows I've tried to forgive this person, but I can't forgive this person because what this person did is so bad that I cannot, if I did forgive him, I'm letting him off the hook. I can't do that. Jesus says, rise. Pick up the thing that you've been laying down on and start walking. Lord, if you could just show me how to do that. We come to church because we need Jesus. We don't always say it that way, but we need him. And we don't need him just to get to heaven. Of course we need him to get to heaven. He died on the cross, shed his blood so sins could be removed, but I need Jesus for every day. I need Jesus for the weaknesses that I have. I need Jesus to overcome the habits and the addictions and the thoughts and the feelings that are holding me down like this man was on his mat. And maybe somebody for 38 years has been wrestling with something they just can't get over. And Jesus is saying, rise, pick up your bed, walk. And we say, I can't. They say that talk is cheap. It is cheap unless Jesus is doing the talking. And if Jesus says rise, if Jesus says pick up your bed, if Jesus says walk, you can do whatever Jesus says. We have to rely on him. And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. He did that because Jesus said it. When Jesus said it, something about Jesus' words, powerful. His words could still a storm. So we got to recognize that when we're reading the story of Jesus, whenever he speaks, his words are powerful. They're not like our words. Our words are neither here nor there. His words can lift us, get us off of the bed that we're on, and get us walking again. His words. I read a story about Reuben. This is his story. Reuben smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. He wanted to quit. He tried Nico, Sacco, Knocko, Schlicko, every kind of O there was out there. Didn't work. He was addicted. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, not for snacks, but to smoke a cigarette, which is crazy. Because the ashes that fall to the ground may not be the cigarettes. Could be yours. About 50-something years ago, I buried a family, husband, a wife, 3 little children, because the father was smoking in bed. Tragic. Reuben wanted to quit. He was in a church. It wasn't sunlight. He was in a church, and while he was in the church, the preacher was talking about open up the altar to come down to the altar, and the Spirit of God started to speak to Reuben, and the Spirit of God said, take your pack of cigarettes, bring them down to the altar, and leave them there. And this is the conversation that Reuben had with the Lord. What? First of all, he said, I need this pack of cigarettes. And then he said, what good would it be for me to get up out of my seat, come down to the altar, put my pack of cigarettes down? What good is that? I've tried everything to get rid of this habit. And the Spirit of the Lord kept telling him the same thing. Didn't explain, just told him again, get up, get down to the altar, put your pack of cigarettes down. Finally, the wrestling match was over. He got up and came down to the altar, put his pack of cigarettes down. This is his testimony. He said, when I walked away a free man. I tried everything. Nothing worked. But when I did what God said, something happened. Now, he said, when I'm next to people who are smoking, I feel nauseous. That's his testimony. I did what God said. It could be that somebody here today is hearing a word. It's really not the word about the lame man at the pool of Bethesda who's been there for 38 years. It's a word that you need to hear specifically for you because of your situation. And Jesus is standing before you and he's saying, rise, pick up what you've been leaning on, put it on your back, and walk. When you first meet this man, he's lying down on a mat. When you last see this man, he's got the mat on his back. And that's what Jesus wants us to do. Take the thing that's holding you down and put it on your back. There's victory.
Come on and rise.
All he had to do is get up, because it's a healing. God wants to heal us. He does not want us to be chained to the weakness that confines us, the chain that holds us down. We get up and we allow him to do what only God can do. This is not a human thing. This is not pumping up psychologically an attitude to help you. No, this is divine. This man could not get up. He tried until Jesus spoke. And he wants to say something to you today. What he has to say is victory. And we come to church and we realize that there's only one person that we can go to when we have tried everything and nothing works. It's God. He's the one that heals. I'd like to open up this altar. If you have a need and you like to know the answer to the question, does Jesus see? Does Jesus know? Does Jesus care? This song will help us. And this altar is open. I'll be glad to pray with you.
I am the God that healeth thee. I am the Lord, your healer. I sent my word and healed your disease. I am the Lord, your healer.